Morning friends, my name is Avinash Agarwal and I welcome you all to Ecoholics YouTube channel. Friends, in this video I will be discussing with you important current affairs for 11th May 2024. Today being a Saturday, there are not a lot of good quantity of articles, right? But we see a lot of good quality of articles. And I was able to spot two important articles across two different publications which are talking about stuffs which are extremely relevant to any of the examinations related to economics that you will ever appear for. First article is regarding the kind of steps that the Ministry of Commerce and Industries is planning to take to diversify and increase exports from India. So as you can understand that increasing exports from India is like a bread and butter question for any examiner, for any student, right? Typically at any stage in your examination journey, you can be expected to answer this kind of a question, whether it is, let us say, a mains or a subjective answer writing or interview kind of an examination, right? You can be always expected to answer this kind of a question. Now, if you are giving your typical hackneyed, often repeated type of suggestions, they hold no value. They impress nobody, which is exactly where your current orientation helps. Like, for instance, this article we will talk about diversification of various, geographies. I remember talking about, exports, agricultural exports with you guys in this lecture series itself. And in that discussion, we were seeing that how the erratic export bans that Government of India places on agricultural items is an unhealthy thing to do, because that kind of discourages our customers to be loyal to us, right? So if you are discussing suggestions, policy suggestions, right? So one policy suggestion comes out of this article, a very relevant suggestion. Another policy suggestion comes out of that agriculture article that we discussed a couple of days ago. Yet another policy suggestion comes out of the pharmaceutical article that we discussed a couple of days ago, where we were saying that we are going to basically have a parity between our certifications and the good manufacturing practices that WHO has prescribed. Okay. So as what I'm trying to say over here is that there are three important policy suggestions that you can make, which are very sectoral, right? Which are very deep, which are very specific, and you can see that okay, these are the things that we are currently working upon, and I also feel that we can do a couple of these things as well. So that makes for a very good and an interesting answer. Is that clear for all of you? Do you understand how you are supposed to make notes? Do you understand how you are supposed to use this series? Let's say that a lot of students ask me that how they are supposed to make notes for this particular series. I'll give you an approach today and then I will start my discussion. See, whichever exam that you are preparing for, IAS or IES or RBI, wherever you are preparing economics, okay? So what you can do is that you take your syllabus, right, and take a diary, okay, and on every fourth, fifth page, let us say, write one point of the syllabus over there. Let's say that something related to exports or something related to balance of payment is a part of, let us say, your syllabus. So you write that, right, and there just keep going and writing 2-3 lines from, let us say, export related articles that you read, right? That export diversification, just write 15-20 words over there, from this article, maybe 20 to 15-20 words from another article, 15-20 words from another article. So what I'm essentially trying to give you an idea is that don't make notes for the sake of making notes. Make targeted notes, because questions are going to be asked in a targeted manner. They're going to ask you specific questions picking up specific aspects of your syllabus. So pick up your syllabus, pick up your PYQs, identify where the questions can come from, where the questions have come from, make a diary, right? And once that diary has been made, once those sections have been made, that okay, this is my agriculture section, this is my industry section, this is my direct taxes section, this is my indirect taxes section, and so on, then make notes accordingly. Like for instance, in one of the articles earlier, we were speaking about the behavior of income tax and corporate tax. Okay. Before that, we were talking about the merit or the demerit of having an inheritance tax in place. Today, in the second article, we'll be talking about the behavior of GST, right? So what that does is that taxation के ऊपर से they are definitely going to ask you a question for sure, let's say, right? So which aspect are they going to ask question? We don't. But if we keep covering a variety of different aspects, then the probability that we will be able to answer those questions will be higher. So keep these basic things in mind. This is just a random discussion that I started regarding how you can, strategically make notes, tactically make notes such that you are in a position to use them well in the examination. If you want to have this kind of a discussion, you want us to elaborate with you, you want us to brainstorm with you, you can always connect with us, right? And as I've always said, that these notes should be downloaded from our app, right? So you can download our app, do a free registration, quick registration, go to the study material section, find the current affairs PDFs, download it, and make good use of it, right? So let us start. If there is anything that anybody would like to say or ask, this is the right time to do that, right? Otherwise, let us start our discussion. Okay. So this is the first important topic, right? Which is exports diversification, right? Moving away from traditional geographies. So like I said, that the Commerce Ministry is planning to diversify exports destinations. We have identified new destinations for electronic goods, for drugs, for engineering goods, and for food products. These are important exports items from India. As you can see that these are basically all goods, right? So the focus is upon, let us say, boosting manufacturing in India, boosting value addition in India, right? Making sure that our trade deficit can be narrowed if we can, let us say, increase the exports of these items from India. So typically what is happening is that we are over reliant upon US and Europe, which is not a good thing, and it's not making sense either, because if there is purchasing power in other geographies, then we should make use of that purchasing power, right? If there is demand anywhere, we should be able to cater to that demand. That's just plain common sense speaking over here, right? So for instance, we have identified these countries which are holding a lot of potential in general, not any specific goods, but in general they are holding a lot of potential. Saudi, France, Vietnam, Netherlands, Mexico, Ethiopia. So you've done some kind of a market research to be able to identify this, right? So you want to believe in this. Like for instance, iron ore. So for instance, what they're saying is that we have identified absolutely new markets, right, for iron ore, engineering goods, drugs, electronics, agriculture, and processed food, which is very good, because if these absolutely new markets can be tapped, and if they can make a needle moving contribution to our exports, we are not losing. Another strategy that we are bringing into place is that we are trying to broaden the basket of our food processing exports. Like for instance, we want to export more of alcoholic beverages, ready to eat food, confectionery items, value added products made out of banana and jackfruit, right? Because what we want to do is that we want to move up the ladder of value chain wherever we can, right? And if we can do that for agricultural products, then that will give us a double whammy, right? Or a double bonanza, in the sense that farmers will also benefit, right? They can have a higher realization for their produce. Industries can be set up near the farms to process these items, which can again create a lot of jobs. A lot of wastage that is happening because your food goes rotting away, that can be reduced quite significantly, and you also end up making a significant amount of money via exports of these items. So everybody wins essentially, right? So definitely food processing has always been on India's radar, and there are certain ideas which have been thrown over here which you should keep in mind, right? So like for instance, so far as iron ore is concerned, so traditionally we have been sending it across to China, Indonesia, Malaysia, Korea, and Netherlands. And now we are thinking that, okay, we need to target France, Saudi, as well as Kenya. Now Kenya is something that nobody will probably ever mention in their answer, right? With no stereotyping, with no discrimination. I'm just saying that when you think about exports, what will you think? North America, West Asia, North America, Western Europe, etc., etc. But this kind of a granular approach, this kind of a specific approach is what is often missing in your answers. That you're not giving me anything new, you're not giving me anything relevant, you're not giving me anything which makes me go wow. You have to treat me like a consumer, and you have to treat your answers like a, let us say, a product that I'm consuming. And if you're making a product which has no distinction, no differentiation, no value addition, right? its features are not spelled out properly, right? Inclusions are all in whatever you have included in that product is all bullshit. Not sorry, whatever you have excluded out of the products are all the good things. So why should I give you marks? So start thinking from that perspective. That will change your approach, right? You have to treat the examiner as a consumer of your product, and that consumer should go wow. That is how you will get marks. So these kinds of points which will typically not be there in normal answers should be there in your answers. Like for instance, for engineering goods, we have identified South Home. Will you ever mention South Home in your answer? Never. But mention Government of India, Ministry of Commerce is talking about it. So South Home, Macau, Georgia, Croatia, Belize. You'll never ever write these countries in your answer sheets. Write them. Azerbaijan, Myanmar, Lithuania, Norway. Because we are not just saying random Eastern Europe में भेज दो. नहीं भाई, Eastern Europe में we have not included Latvia and Estonia, right? We have included only Lithuania. Please understand my point, right? We are also thinking of sending engineering goods to Somalia. Are you getting my points? So don't judge it. Believe the government in doing whatever it is doing, and accept it. Earlier, so typically engineering goods go to US, UAE, Saudi, Germany, Italy. ठीक है, अच्छी बात है. But now, how much can you send to these markets? Because these markets are plateauing. We want growth, right? So that is where we are trying to find growth. For drugs and pharmaceuticals, we have identified Montenegro, South Sudan, Chad, Comoros, Brunei, Latvia, Ireland, Sweden, Haiti, Ethiopia. Now somebody will write, sir, how to remember this? Arey bhai, how to remember this? First make a note, then revise it. First make a crisp note, concise note, right? Use the 10% formula. That if you are reading 10,000 words, that should get converted into 1,000 words. Then when you are rereading 1,000 words, try to reduce them into 800 words. Keep making your notes concise, right? Shrink it down. So automatically you will be able to find time to revise it. And if you are able to find time to revise it, then you will be able to remember it. So there is no problem over there. Okay guys. फिर उसके बाद इलेक्ट्रॉनिक गुड्स के लिए अगेन वी हैव आइडेंटिफाइड साउथ ओम, मॉन्टेनेग्रो, केमन आइलैंड, सेंट विंसेंट, मंगोलिया, एल सेल्वेडोर, तुर्कमेनिस्तान, होंडुरास, बहरीन. सो इतना सारा मेंशन करने की जरूरत नहीं है, राइट? जस्ट मेंशन अ कपल ऑफ कंट्रीज, राइट? दैट मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ कॉमर्स ने ऐसे आइडेंटिफाई करा है. सो द ब्लेम इजंट ऑन यू, द ब्लेम इज ऑन मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ कॉमर्स, एंड द एग्जामिनर गेट्स टू रीड समथिंग न्यू एंड डिफरेंट. For agriculture and processed food exports, you identified Nigeria, Switzerland, Lithuania, Slovenia. So you can pick one from each continent. One from Africa, one from Europe, one from, let us say, Asia, one from North America, one from South America. ऐसे करके you can pick up, right? And अलग अलग. तो उससे क्या होगा कि variety आएगा, diversity आएगा आपके answers के अंदर, right? So moving ahead then. Right, again, I'm not discussing some of these random numbers over here. It's not going to add a lot of value to our discussion or your thought process. So the idea being that why are we focusing on processed food exports? Because we want to encourage farmers to diversify their crops. We want them to produce more cash crops as per the market demands, right? And we want to make sure that we are present in processed food products in the global markets, right? And that will help us in addressing our import exports imbalance, right? So Ministry of Commerce is working with APIDA. You can mention APIDA kind of bodies, right, in your answers, right? One of the export promotion things that you can mention is that, like, for example, there is something called as a TexProSil. What is a TexProSil? It is basically a council for promotion of exports in the textile industry. Similarly, we have APIDA, Agricultural and Processed Food Products Export Development Authority. So we have sector specific export development authorities. And mentioning 3, 4 or 4, 5 for important areas. They say, I'm sure that pharmaceuticals is an important exports from India. So you can just mention their export development authority ka name. Food processing is an important exports. Electronics is an important exports, right? So ऐसे करके what you can do is that you can mention 4, 5. Just the short forms will also be fine. You don't need to write the full forms. You don't need to waste time and words. So if you just write the short forms also, कि हाँ, these export development authorities or these bodies need to get their act right. Write it प्यार से. Don't like the way I am. Don't be like. So the idea is that if you write that, okay, these are the important institutions and they can do a better. They have done a great job and they can do a fantastic job going ahead. If they undertake, let us say, manpower, augmentation and resources augmentation and etc. etc. Right. So that becomes a point. So what I'm basically trying to do for you is that I'm trying to help you understand that, boss, you need to add value into your answers and you need to be very tactical about it. You need to be very strategic about it. What do you say to whom, when, where matters a lot, right, in life. So when you will be sitting for, let's say, interviews or job interviews, right? So you have to say something to get the attention of the other person. Otherwise, the other person is not interested in. Why will he be interested in you? There are thousands of people standing in a line waiting for a job. Are you getting my point? So you have to think how you will be different. Okay. So is this clear? Any doubts anybody has? Right. Pratik, good morning. Thank you for joining in. Everybody else, guys, any questions, any doubts, anything you would like to say, use the chat box. At least say hi, good morning in the chat box. I would like to know your names of those who are there in the lecture, right? I'm sure you can do that much for me. So please do that. Now, I always wanted to talk about GST since a very long time, and I got this fantastic editorial in Economic and Political Weekly, again a very reputed and a very old publication in India, right? So they are talking about the behavior of GST in the last couple of months and quarters, and they're also taking a long-term view, right? And they're also giving you a sense that how successful has the GST rollout been in India, right? So within like 900 words, they are, throwing a lot of value at you, right? So Basudev, hi, I'm taking your name for the first time. I hope, Basudev, that you are comfortable in my lectures. I'm making sense to you. If there is anything that you would like to ask, say, please share, right? Please tell me which exam are you preparing for, Basudev as well as Pratik. I would always be very willing to know more about you, and you should always be willing to know more about me. Like for instance, I stay in Mumbai, right? I work in a startup, right? I've graduated from IIM Calcutta, right? So I can tell you about myself. You can tell me about yourself, guys. Okay. So moving ahead. So speaking about GST, so the gross collection of GST, it rose to a new high in April 2024. So we touched a number of 2.1 lakh crore, right? And there was a now the press has stopped celebrating the achievements of GST. So earlier I remember that whenever GST crossed, oh my God, highest record broken, etc., used to happen. Now we are like, okay, these records are getting broken every second, third month. So what is there to celebrate? But yes, 2.1 lakh crore. It's a psychological milestone. Being above 2 lakh crores is a psychological milestone, right? So that is very good. So this GST framework was introduced in July of 2017. It took us approximately 16 months to cross 1 lakh crore. It took us good 48 months to cross 1.5 lakh crores. Now we have crossed the 2 lakh crore barrier in 18 months. So you can see that there is a level of buoyancy. There is a level of upsurge, right? There is a level of upswing. There is a momentum in GST which is getting restored, right? So you can see over here, don't need to go too granular into these numbers because that's not required, but you should know the trend, right? So collection has steadily pushed up in the so you can see that the collection has steadily pushed up, momentum, right? Just to discuss something very functional over here, right? So peaking of the GST in April of 2024 is not a surprise because nature of consumption is seasonal, right? And GST collection protocols are such that you typically end up collecting the highest amount of GST at the start and the end of the year. So the fact that you have collected 2.1 lakh crores right at the start of the financial year shouldn't come as a surprise to you, right? So it's a good thing. Okay. Seasonal, why are we talking about seasonal stuff over here? Typically, as the crop gets harvested, as it comes into the market, etc., right? So related to that, you have an income, then you spend money, etc. When you spend money, so bills are getting made. When bills are getting made, GST is getting collected. When GST is getting collected, so hence the GST collection increases. So in India, a lot of things are related with our harvesting cycles, right? So that is why we are saying that the nature of consumption is such. So that is the kind of understanding that you need to have. Okay. Growth of GST collection has varied significantly across states. There are states such as Delhi, Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, where we have 25-30% of increase or growth, and we have states such as Kerala, Rajasthan, Jammu and Kashmir, where we have less than 5% growth, right? So a variety of growth rates are being seen. Why is it that gross GST collection is increasing? Well, the biggest reason is that we are restoring the reductions. We are rather, just put it simply, we are increasing the effective GST rates. So when GST was introduced, there was a lot of bargaining around it. There was a lot of negotiations around it. There was a lot of haggling around it. And the effective GST rate, right? I mean, we are charging GST 18% on this, 28% on this, 5% on this, blah, 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 blah. So there are like thousands and lakhs of products upon which a variety of GST is being charged. What is that one single number which is a representative of the entire universe? That is the average or the effective GST rate that is getting collected. So that effective GST rate was pushed downwards, right, because of political compulsions, right? So as a result of which your GST collection was suffering. Now there is a reversal, that the effective GST rate, which represents the entire universe of GST rates that we are collecting, right? So that number is started inching up again, right? So you can see over here, there are some, these are important numbers for you, right? So you see that the effective GST rate was 14.4% in July 2017. It reduces to 12.6% in 2018-19. It reduces further to 11.9% in 2019. If I were you, I would note this down. This is important, right? So why is it that effective GST rate is declining? Political compulsions, wanting to keep prices under control. Elections were there in 2019. So we did not want to pinch people the wrong way. Are you getting my point? Because otherwise then they will give you the votes in the wrong way, right? So these were the issues, right? Now what has happened of late is that your GST rates have started improving a little bit. So you can see that we were at 11.6 over here. We became 11.8. We came at 12.23. We can improve further, as we will see further in this article, that there are countries, 20 countries at least, that we can identify whose GST, effective GST rates are higher than ours. So there is significant room for revenue mobilization via GST. And it is important, we'll discuss, right? So this much is clear to you that the effective GST rate is undergoing a U-turn, right? So it declined and now we are trying to basically bring it up. We are still not there where we want to be, but we have started the journey. So it will help in improved resource mobilization, etc. One major handicap of GST that we should get rid of is the constant tinkering with rates. See, what happens is that our ministers and governments, and this is also true across the world, they are susceptible to lobbying, right? That let us say that you are manufacturer of some XYZ items, you all suddenly start doing dharna pradarshan, right? That no, we are getting impacted because of high GST rate, our customers are not purchasing, blah, 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 right? And you start, banging the doors of various ministers at the state level, and you start banging the doors of various ministers at the union level. You start promising, consequences, etc., etc. They get scared, they will start tinkering with the rates. Are you getting my point? So the political economy is messed up. It's happening in every country. India is not alone, right? So this constant tinkering with rates has to somewhere stop. I don't know how it will stop. But if a rate has been decided, then please allow that rate to continue for at least 2 to 3 years. You cannot just keep tinkering. So that's what the suggestion over here is coming. I'm just leaving this part over here and moving ahead, right? Now, the most important question that needs to be asked is that how is the GST framework comparing with, let us say, the pre-GST framework? Because we had indirect taxes before GST was introduced. So there was something which was already in place, and now we have something new in place. So how is the old versus new comparison happening, and how do you compare? So what is that one number or one metric that you should look at to compare the old and the new frameworks, right? So that number is your gross GST collection to GDP ratio, meaning that you create a fraction, you put all indirect taxes which were subsumed under GST, or you put GST in the numerator, right? Okay, you put the nominal GDP of your country in the denominator, multiply by 100, right, and arrive at a percentage figure. Okay, so what has happened to this number? This is the only number that matters in old versus new comparison, because ultimately tax is being collected for what? Paisa. Everybody wants paisa. Are you getting my point? So what was the indirect tax collection as a percentage of GDP pre-GST, and what is the indirect tax collection through GST as a percentage of GDP after the GST was introduced? That's the only thing that matters, right? Never tell me that GST brought formalization, GST brought this, GST brought that. All of those are side benefits, right? You don't do reforms for side benefits. You do reforms for a particular reason, and that reason is most important revenue, because भैया revenue है तो government है तो welfare है तो development है, right? You understand that chain. So what has happened? Okay, so see, before GST was introduced, we were at 6.4% of GDP. So all the indirect taxes, roughly 40, 45, 50 taxes that were subsumed under the GST, right? All of those taxes combined together gave 6.4% of GDP to our governments. Where are we now, right? So you have to realize that we have not reached 6.4%. I don't know what, when we introduce GST 2017, it is 2024, good 6-7 years, right? After good 6-7 years, we have not been able to reach 6.4% of GDP, right? So we were at 6%, we went down to 5.1%, thereafter we came up to 5.5%, now we have come to 6%, right? And right now we may be at 6.13%. So we are still shy of 6.4%. We are still not there, right? We are still, and the best part is that the government is not giving this kind of data out freely, openly and transparently. These are all back of the envelope calculations that economists and researchers have to do, and they are telling us that this number is at 6.13%, right? So basically that means that we are still short of, right, where we had started from. Why did we introduce GST? What was the promise? The promise was that it will help increase revenue mobilization through indirect taxes. Has that happened in percentage of GDP terms? Answer is no, right? Now, of course, there are teething issues. It takes time, right? It's a new reform. It is going to open up vistas of, future improvements. These are all promises. These things should happen. But the as is situation is that we are not there yet. We may be there going ahead. We surely can be there. There is no rocket science involved, but we are not there yet, right? So another aspect that you need to appreciate is that the GST that we have collected, it would have been even lower if we subtract the compensation cess that was introduced, right? So this compensation cess that was introduced in India, right, that has been extended till 2027, 2026, and this was never meant to be, right? But this compensation cess was introduced because there were such large gaps in the actual GST collection than what we had, projected, that we had to start collecting compensation cess, and we are making this compensation cess it's almost like a permanent feature now, because it's going up to 2026. There is all probability that in 2026 that the government may think that, okay, one section of people may think that let us increase the life of compensation cess, because once you get addicted to the idea of a revenue coming from a particular source, you don't want to give it up, because people have accepted it, they have factored it in, they are not protesting against it. So I do, generally speaking, I would say, right? So anyways, the conclusion being that GST revenues basically are nowhere near the levels that were attained by the taxes that were subsumed under the GST even after 6 years. This is an unmistakable conclusion. This is not a political conclusion, it's a fact-based conclusion. And there is a solution. And what is the solution? You look at other countries, right? So India's effective GST rate is still around 12%, as we just discussed, right? It is still around 12%, whereas China is at 13%, Egypt is at 14%, South Africa is at 15%, Mauritius is at 15%, Israel is at 17%, Pakistan is at 16 to 18%. They are also confused, right? Germany is at 19%, France 20%. So you can very clearly see that a lot of countries are essentially charging a higher indirect tax rate, right? Just charging a tax is not the only job of the government. The job of the government is also there to create an ecosystem which enables manufacturers to do their job. So you have to have efficiencies in other areas as well. You cannot just keep increasing the GST rate, saying that other countries are also charging. You also need to give facilities. So if you are charging, make life easier for them so that their overall cost of production remains rationalized. Having said that, what you can say to the examiner definitely is that other countries are charging a higher indirect tax rate, and there is significant room available for India to be able to mop up higher taxes, right? So that is, so if our target is 6.4% of GDP and we have already reached 6.15% of GDP, right, and there is so much headroom that is available when we compare ourselves with other comparable countries, like for example South Africa is a comparable country, right? I would go so on as to say that even Egypt is a comparable country, let's say, right? So 14-15% is fine, कोई बात नहीं है, it will solve a lot of our problems. So if we take this kind of a step, right, along with improving the GST regime in general, which probably we'll talk about at some other point of time, so it will significantly help in improving the state revenues. So this is my submission to you guys today. I had a lot of fun this week, teaching economics to you guys through current affairs, through newspaper articles, right? This is for me a very dynamic, a very motivating way of starting my day. I hope some of you also share this thought process, right? So that's about it from my side. Gyan Prakash has something to say, right? Yes, Pratik, you are my old student. I was remembering that I know this name from somewhere in the past. So how have you been, Pratik? You can get connected with me on LinkedIn. You can send a message to me. I'll share my contact with you. I would like to speak with you, Pratik, right? And that applies to everybody. Okay. So yeah, Gyan Prakash has a doubt. I'm preparing for SSCJE exam. In this content helpful, I think so. Please guide me. What should I know more about economics? See, what you do, Gyan Prakash, is very simple. Pick up the exam ka syllabus that you're preparing for. Pick up the economics syllabus that you're preparing for, right? And start looking at that syllabus, right? Start looking at the previous year questions that have been asked on those topics, okay? And start fitting the current affairs that we are discussing in that syllabus. I promise you that the current affairs that I am discussing will get fitted into that syllabus somewhere or the other, right? That is what I was discussing at the start of the session, right? So just have a look at the start of this video. For the first 5-10 minutes, I've discussed exactly that create, let us say, a notebook or a diary, write down your syllabus ka points on top of the pages. Let's say one of the points is exports / balance of payment / international trade, right? So one typical question that often gets asked is, how do you increase exports from India? So in today's discussion, you get 4, 5, 6 points. Write those 4, 5, 6 points down there, right? From few days ago ka discussion, you get 2, 3 points. Write those points down. So make notes so that those notes are useful for you. Don't make notes for the sake of making notes, because you're not getting paid to make notes, right? It's not your job to make notes. Your job or your end goal is to give fantastic answers to questions being asked, whether in the written format or in the oral format. So use these lectures strategically to pick up 2-3 points, 2-3 value added points, very valuable points, which you will not find anywhere, right? Which will be otherwise very difficult for you to gather, right? So pick them up and place them in the right place in your, let us say, notebook or diary, under the right syllabus head, so that you can revise it, and so that you can use it. So when you attend this lecture, you get 2 things out of it. A, you understand a lot of things which are happening around you in the world and the economy, right? And B, you get at least 5 to 7 to 8 value added points, right, which you can integrate into your answers. That is the that should be your takeaway. That should be your way of approaching things. That is what I would like to suggest, Gyan Prakash. So I think that I've answered your question. If there is anything, then we can always continue this discussion. We can always keep going back and forth. Monday I will see you again with new articles. So until then, I'll take your leave, right? If there is anything that you would like to ask or say, you can always get in touch with Ecoholics. You can mail us, you can call us, right? You can speak with Sanat sir, you can speak with Asavri ma'am, you can speak with absolutely every teacher on the platform. You can get in touch with them, and you can get in touch with us also. Thank you so much, guys, and see you all around. Bye bye, take care, and Jai Hind to all of you.